When my own son told me dinner was cancelled, I just nodded, grabbed my jacket, and drove over anyway, even though my chest felt like it was splitting in half. By the time I stepped through that doorway, my daughter-in-law was laughing at the table with everyone else, without me. But here's the part they didn't know. Within a few weeks, their mortgage would be hanging by a thread, and their perfect little world? Crumbling. Family should mean respect. You won't believe how I turned their betrayal into justice. Stay with me until the end, and hit subscribe if you've ever been treated like you didn't belong at your own family's table. I should probably back up and tell you who I am. My name's Michael Carter, I'm 58, and I've worked my whole life as a union electrician in Dallas, Texas. 35 years of climbing ladders, sweating through Texas summers, missing birthdays because of double shifts. But I did it all because I wanted to give my kids a better life than the one I had. I raised 2 kids with my late wife, Susan. She passed away 8 years ago from breast cancer, and ever since then I've been trying to keep the family glued together. My daughter, Emily, is 28, working as a nurse in Houston. My son, Brian, the one who told me dinner was cancelled, is 32. Married just 2 years ago to Hannah, who, let's just say, never made an effort to hide the fact that she thinks I'm beneath her. Brian used to be my buddy. We'd go fishing every spring, watch the Cowboys play every Sunday, drink beer on the back porch. He was always a good kid. But when Hannah came into the picture, something changed. Suddenly, my advice wasn't needed. My opinions didn't matter. And my place at the table, literally, was up for negotiation. I'm not saying it was all Hannah's fault. Brian's a grown man, he makes his own choices. But you could see the shift clear as day. When I'd bring up something like how I was thinking of retiring early and living off my pension and 401k, Brian would shut me down with a look that said, "Dad, nobody cares." When I hinted about maybe downsizing my house, Hannah chimed in, "You should think about leaving that place to us when the time comes." That was the first time I felt like I was less of a father and more of a walking inheritance to her. And that brings us to this dinner. It was supposed to be Sunday night. Family dinner had been my tradition for years. I cook, I host, we sit down together. That night, I had made my famous pot roast, slow cooked since morning. Around 5:30, I called Brian to check when they'd be arriving. His words still ring in my ears, "Dinner's off, Dad. Hannah's not feeling up to it. We'll do it another time." My stomach sank. I stood there, ladle in hand, staring at the pot roast, the steam rising like a cruel joke. Something in my gut told me he wasn't telling the whole story. So I drove over. And sure enough, when I stepped through that door, there they all were, Brian, Hannah, and even a couple of Hannah's friends, plates full, wine glasses clinking. Hannah's laugh echoed through the dining room like a knife twisting in my back. What I didn't know then, as I stood frozen in the doorway, was that this night would set off a chain reaction. Because when you push a man who's given everything, when you strip him of dignity in his own family, you wake up consequences you never saw coming. I wish I could tell you I froze at the door, that I hesitated before stepping in. But no, my legs carried me straight into that dining room like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. The sound of laughter hit me first. It wasn't just light chuckles, it was full-on belly laughter, the kind that makes your stomach ache. And it was coming from my son, his wife, and her family, all gathered around my table. My table. Plates full of food sat steaming in the center. Turkey, mashed potatoes, cornbread, even my green bean casserole recipe, the one my late wife and I made together every Christmas. They'd recreated it without me. And there she was, my daughter-in-law Tiffany, sitting in my wife's old seat at the head of the table, raising her glass like she was queen of the castle. I cleared my throat, but the room didn't go quiet. They barely looked up. Finally, Tiffany smirked. "Oh, Carl, didn't Jason tell you? Dinner was cancelled." Cancelled. I repeated. My voice came out rougher than I expected. Looks pretty alive to me. Jason, my own son, couldn't even meet my eyes. He pushed food around on his plate like a scolded teenager, even though he's 32. "Dad, we just thought maybe you'd want a quiet night," he muttered. Quiet night. My chest tightened. "Jason, you told me not to come, while you're in my house, eating my food with her family?" Tiffany leaned forward, still smirking. "Well, technically Jason and I are taking over. You know, moving forward with our family traditions. You had your time." I swear, I almost saw red. My late wife, God rest her soul, had poured her heart into those traditions. Every casserole, every blessing before meals, every ornament on the tree, they weren't just my time. They were our history. Taking over? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. You mean erasing me? Tiffany didn't deny it. She actually raised her wine glass higher. Out with the old, in with the new. That one sentence sliced through me. I noticed something then. All the laughter had died down. Her family looked uncomfortable, whispering among themselves. Even Jason's younger sister, my daughter Emily, who was sitting at the far end, gave me a look that said I didn't know about this either. But Jason? He stayed silent. Didn't defend me, didn't defend the traditions. Nothing. Jason, I said, and my voice cracked a little. Do you remember the year your mom stayed up all night making pies because you wanted both pecan and pumpkin? Do you remember the way she cried when you finally said thank you? His fork clinked against the plate. His jaw clenched. He remembered. He just didn't want to face it. Tiffany broke the silence. Carl, you really shouldn't bring up the past. It makes everyone uncomfortable. We're building something fresh here. And honestly, maybe you should think about retirement homes, instead of hovering. Her words hit me harder than I thought possible. Retirement homes. Hovering. Like I was some stray dog at the doorstep of the family I built. I finally looked around the table, really looked. Every photo on the wall, every dish on that table, every piece of furniture, it was all bought by me and my late wife. We'd paid the mortgage, kept the lights on, kept this house standing. And here I was, a ghost in my own home. That's when it clicked. Tiffany wasn't just being cruel for sport. This was a plan. She wanted me pushed out completely. Once she had Jason fully under her thumb, she'd control the house, the bank accounts, the future. I sat down slowly, pulling out the chair at the far end. You can laugh without me, I said, keeping my voice low but firm, but you don't get to erase me. Not in this house. Jason looked like he wanted to say something, but Tiffany's nails dug into his arm under the table. I saw it. He stayed quiet. So I let the silence hang there heavy, until Tiffany forced another fake laugh to break it. But everyone at that table knew, the dinner wasn't cancelled. The family was. And I was about to show them just how dangerous it was to underestimate the man who built it all. I woke up the next morning with that same bitter taste in my mouth, like someone had poured vinegar down my throat. I couldn't shake the image of my daughter-in-law laughing at that table while my son, my own flesh and blood, had texted me dinner cancelled. The betrayal cut deep. But that morning, I decided I wasn't just going to sit around and mope. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through some old files I kept backed up on a hard drive. Call it a habit. I used to work in HR for a big insurance company, so I've always been meticulous about documentation. And boy, did I keep receipts. I had bank records, loan papers, even old copies of their joint mortgage documents because my son had once asked me to co-sign. That was years back, but the memory of his mom, "We'll pay it off fast, don't worry," still stung. I never co-signed, thank God, but I did keep every email. As I sifted through, something jumped out. Their house wasn't just stretched thin with one mortgage. They'd refinanced twice. The equity they bragged about at Christmas? Gone. They were basically living on borrowed time, one missed payment away from foreclosure. And from the numbers I was seeing, they weren't far from that cliff. That discovery didn't make me happy. It made me furious. Here they were, cutting me out of family dinners like I was some embarrassing stranger, yet sitting in a $500,000 house that was only standing because of shaky loans and credit cards. I muttered out loud, "So this is what I raised? A man who betrays his own mother for a fake picture-perfect life." I decided I needed to see things for myself, so I drove by their neighborhood. From the outside, their house looked like something from a glossy magazine, fresh paint, 2 shiny cars in the driveway. But I knew the truth now, it was a facade built on debt. That's when an idea began to take root. I wasn't powerless here. If my son wanted to treat me like I didn't belong, fine. But I wasn't about to let him and his wife play house while disrespecting me. I still had leverage, more than they realized. That evening, I got a call from an old friend, Linda, who used to work at the county clerk's office. I casually asked her about property filings, and she reminded me, "Public records, honey. You can look up any mortgage or lien with just an address." My heart sped up. I had everything I needed to confirm what I suspected. Sure enough, when I pulled their record online, it was worse than I thought. Not only had they refinanced, but they'd also taken out a home equity line of credit, almost maxed out. My son, the one who told me dinner was canceled like I was a nuisance, was juggling debts he could barely pay. And here's where the twist came in: if they defaulted, the first people they'd come begging for help would be me. And this time, I wouldn't be the soft-hearted mom who bailed them out. No, this time, I'd set the rules. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the computer screen. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control returning. They thought they'd excluded me, left me powerless. But they had no idea the storm brewing in their own finances, and no clue that I was already holding the umbrella. This wasn't revenge yet. Not even close. This was just the beginning. I used to think family was unbreakable. I believed love could weather any storm, even when money, pride, or outsiders got involved. But standing in that kitchen, watching my daughter-in-law sneer at me like I was disposable, something deep inside cracked open. And with that crack, memories started flooding back, the kind I had buried because they were too painful to face. This wasn't the first time betrayal had sat at my dinner table. Years ago, before Ethan was even married, I had been through something similar, with my own parents. My father passed away suddenly from a stroke when I was 26, and my mother, well, let's just say she remarried faster than anyone expected. Within months, she signed over the family farm, land that had been in our family for 3 generations, to her new husband. I had poured my sweat into that farm. I was the one baling hay at 2 a.m., the one fixing broken tractors in the dead of winter, the one who had already signed onto a mortgage just to keep the property afloat when Dad's medical bills piled up. I had skin in the game, literally, scars on my hands. And yet, in the eyes of the law, none of that mattered. Because my name wasn't on the deed, I had no claim. My stepfather sold the land 2 years later, cashed out, and left my mom with a condo in Florida. That was the moment I realized, in America, if your name isn't on the paper, your sweat doesn't count. I swore I'd never let anyone pull the rug out from under me again. That's why when I bought my own house, I kept every receipt, every title, every single contract with my name etched in black and white. When I got married, I kept my finances separate. When I divorced years later, I walked away bruised but not broken, because I had learned how to protect myself. And now here I was, seeing history repeat itself, except this time, it wasn't my stepfather or my mother. It was my own son's wife, pulling strings behind the scenes. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Madison wasn't just manipulative, she was strategic. She knew that Ethan, bless his heart, was trusting to a fault. He had inherited my soft side, not my hard lessons. Madison had probably realized that the more she isolated me, the easier it would be for her to take full control of their household, their finances, even the inheritance Ethan stood to get one day. And you better believe there was inheritance. After my divorce, I had worked for nearly 3 decades at a logistics company. I didn't climb to the top, but I built something solid. I maxed out my 401k contributions, bought company stock when it was cheap, and lived below my means. I had a life insurance policy, a pension plan, and a tidy savings account. My name wasn't flashy in town, but I was worth more than people assumed. Madison must have smelled it on me, like a predator sniffing out a weak calf. Why else would she suddenly be so interested in hosting dinners, playing family glue, and volunteering to handle Ethan's HR paperwork when he switched jobs? She wasn't just bossy, she was positioning herself. That realization burned. I remembered one specific day, maybe a year before all this blew up. Ethan had called me, panicked, because he'd just gotten a letter from the bank about a missed mortgage payment. I knew my son, he's meticulous, never forgets bills. But when I asked him about it, he mumbled something about Madison handling the finances now. "She's got spreadsheets, Mom, it's fine," he had said. Spreadsheets, my ass. I had a gut feeling she was moving money around. Whether it was credit card debt, private accounts, or just overspending, something wasn't adding up. And here's the kicker, around that same time, Madison had tried to convince me to add her name as a joint account holder on a small savings fund I had set aside for Ethan and any future grandkids. She had laughed it off, saying, "Oh, it'll just make things easier down the road, you know? Streamline everything." That was my red flag, waving like a siren. I politely declined, but I didn't forget. I started keeping records, not just of my accounts, but of every conversation, every text, every little joke she made about money or property. It was like my father's ghost was whispering in my ear, "Don't be naive twice. Protect what's yours." So when Madison blocked me from that dinner, when she humiliated me in front of Ethan, all those buried memories roared back to life. The farm, the betrayal, the years of scraping by while someone else cashed out. It was like a second wound ripped open. But this time, I wasn't 26. I wasn't powerless. This time, I had the law on my side, the money in my name, and decades of lessons etched into me like armor. And as I sat in my car that night after walking out of their house, I didn't cry. Not one tear. Instead, I opened my glove box, pulled out a folder I had been quietly updating for years, and started making calls. Estate attorney. Financial advisor. Even a contact in HR I trusted from my old company. If Madison thought she could erase me from my own family story, she had no idea that I had been preparing for someone like her since the day my stepfather stole my birthright. She had started a war she didn't even know she was in. I don't know if you've ever felt the kind of calm that only comes after a storm, when you've cried yourself out, yelled yourself out, and then suddenly, you're just clear. That's where I was. Crystal clear. For weeks, I'd been the butt of their private joke, the mother who could be pushed aside, lied to, and discarded. But the thing about me? I may not move fast, but I move steady. And once I start, I don't stop. The first step of my reversal wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was paperwork. Cold, boring, lawyer-approved paperwork. I called my attorney, a man named David Klein, who's been with me since my divorce. "David," I said, "I want to adjust my living trust. My son and daughter-in-law, they're no longer beneficiaries." There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure, Carol?" "Dead sure," I replied. My voice didn't even shake. We set the appointment, and within a week, every single asset, my house, my retirement accounts, even the old lake cabin my husband and I bought for weekend getaways, all of it was reassigned. The primary beneficiary? My granddaughter, Lily. She's only 6, but I wanted to make sure her future was secure. And until she's of age, my sister Susan would serve as trustee. It felt like lifting a mountain off my chest. My son, Jason, thought he could erase me from his family table? Fine. I erased him from my will. But that was just the beginning. 2 weeks later, Jason called me. He never calls. His tone was sugary sweet, like honey dripping over glass shards. "Mom," he said, "Emily and I were thinking, maybe you'd like to come over for dinner this Friday. You know, just us. Family." I almost laughed. Just us. Family. The same word he'd weaponized against me at that so-called canceled dinner. Instead of blowing up, I played it cool. "Sure, Jason," I said. "Friday works. What time?" 7. "Don't be late," he replied, like I was some guest who needed instructions. I hung up and smiled. He had no idea that by Friday, his house of cards would already be wobbling. That same week, I mailed them something they weren't expecting, a polite but firm notice of revocation for the $50,000 loan I had given them 2 years ago to cover Emily's boutique startup. Back then, they promised they'd pay me back once her business took off. Instead, the business folded in under a year, and they treated the money like a gift. I never pressed, but the truth is, I had drawn up a formal loan agreement with David. It was legally binding. With interest. By the time Friday dinner rolled around, Jason and Emily had received the letter. I showed up right on time, carrying a casserole dish like it was just another normal family evening. But the tension was thick enough to slice with a knife. "Mom," Emily said through clenched teeth. "We didn't expect." I cut her off, setting the dish down on their granite countertop. "Oh, don't mind me. I brought food. Thought I'd contribute." Jason cleared his throat. "About that letter." I smiled and poured myself a glass of their fancy Pinot. "Yes, the repayment schedule. You've got 30 days before it goes to collections. It's nothing personal, just business." You should have seen Emily's face. All the color drained from her cheeks. Jason looked like a balloon that had just deflated. But the real kicker came a week later. Remember their mortgage? They'd been bragging for years about their dream house, the 4-bedroom with a manicured lawn and the pool in the back. What they didn't tell everyone was that I was the co-signer on that mortgage. And here's the thing about being a co-signer, you have power. When I pulled out of the agreement, legally, with David handling the paperwork, the bank reassessed their loan. Without my credit backing them, Jason and Emily suddenly looked a lot less stable. Their interest rate ballooned, and the bank sent them a warning: either refinance with better collateral or risk foreclosure. That phone call? Oh, it was delicious. Jason rang me, his voice shaking. "Mom, why are you doing this to us? You're going to ruin us." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I just said, "You canceled dinner on me, Jason. You laughed at me behind closed doors. Family doesn't treat family that way. Actions have consequences." He tried guilt-tripping me, reminding me of when he was a kid and how I'd patch up his scraped knees. But the thing about grown children is, they're not kids anymore. They're adults, and when they choose cruelty, they inherit the cost. By the end of that month, the tables had completely turned. Emily, who loved parading me as the poor old lady, now had to explain to her friends why the bank repossessed her leased luxury SUV. Jason, who thought he'd inherited a safety net just by being my son, had to face reality: the net was gone. Meanwhile, I wasn't sitting in the corner crying. I joined a local community center, started volunteering with seniors who were fighting similar family betrayals. I told my story, not in anger, but in empowerment. And every time, the room nodded along, because they knew. They'd seen it. They'd lived it. The sweetest part? I wasn't bitter anymore. Jason and Emily had tried to humiliate me, but now, every time they looked at me, all they could see was the woman who held the pen that changed their lives. And Lily, my sweet granddaughter, she started spending more weekends with me. I'd take her to the park, bake cookies with her, read bedtime stories in the little guest room I decorated just for her. She didn't know about the inheritance, of course, but she knew something deeper: that her grandma showed up. That her grandma never canceled love. That was my reversal. Quiet, strategic, and utterly devastating for the ones who thought they had the upper hand. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling or fighting. Sometimes, it's letting the paperwork speak for you, and watching the people who underestimated you choke on their own arrogance. And I'll be honest. I slept better than I had in years. When the dust finally settled, I found myself sitting in that same kitchen, quiet, calm, the tick of the wall clock echoing in the background. Only this time, I wasn't the outsider anymore. The house didn't feel like theirs. It felt like mine, because it was mine. The day we went to court, I wore a navy suit I hadn't pulled out since my husband's funeral. Walking into that courthouse, I felt like I was carrying the weight of decades on my back, raising my son, sacrificing for his future, and then being cast aside like I was disposable. But as the judge read the order recognizing my legal rights to the family trust, to the property, and yes, to the mortgage they had stopped paying, I finally felt something I hadn't in months: validation. Diane's smirk disappeared right there in the courtroom. She had been so sure her manipulation would hold up, that her sweet little lies about me being forgetful or too old to manage finances would paint me as some fragile old woman. But the evidence? The lawyer's paperwork, the bank statements, and the witnesses, neighbors who had seen me shoveling snow, paying contractors, driving myself to doctor's appointments, all proved the opposite. I wasn't weak. I wasn't out of touch. I was the backbone they tried to erase. My son Matthew sat 2 rows behind her, his face pale. He wouldn't even look at me. And honestly, that hurt more than anything. But hurt doesn't mean defeated. After the judge banged the gavel and ruled in my favor, I stepped out into the sun. Diane stormed past me, her heels clicking angrily on the pavement. She didn't have her army of relatives cheering anymore. Just silence. And then, something unexpected happened. Matthew followed me out. He hesitated before saying, "Mom, I didn't think you'd actually fight back." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "That's the problem, Matthew. You thought I'd stay quiet. You thought I'd accept being excluded, being lied to, being treated like a burden. But you forgot who raised you. You forgot I built everything you're standing on." He didn't respond. Maybe there was guilt flickering across his face, maybe regret, but I didn't stick around to comfort him. That was no longer my job. Within weeks, Diane and Matthew had to move out of the house. The property was under my name now, officially and permanently. They packed their things into rented U-Hauls, and I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching them go. Diane shot me one last glare, like she wanted me to crumble under the weight of her hatred. Instead, I smiled. Neighbors came by after they left, offering kind words. "You did the right thing," one of them said. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. I remodeled the house, not for them, not to erase memories, but to reclaim it for myself. New paint on the walls, new curtains, a garden in the backyard I'd always dreamed of planting but never had the time. Every nail, every flower, every brushstroke whispered, "You are not invisible. You are not disposable." But the biggest change wasn't the house. It was me. I joined a senior advocacy group in town, helping other women understand their legal rights, whether about pensions, wills, or standing up to greedy in-laws. I started speaking at local meetings, sharing my story. At first my voice shook. But with every retelling, it grew stronger. People listened. Some cried. Some hugged me after, whispering, "I thought I was the only one." That's when I realized this wasn't just about me versus Diane. It was about women like me everywhere, mothers, widows, grandmothers, who were told to sit down, shut up, and hand over everything they've worked for. No. We deserve better. One evening, as I sat at the dining table, the same one where Diane once laughed at me, I lit a single candle and poured myself a glass of wine. The room was quiet, but it wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I thought about my late husband. About how he always told me, "Don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness." I had let that slide for too long. But now I was finally living it. Did I miss my son? Of course. A piece of me always will. But I also knew this: love without respect is just chains disguised as family. And I had broken free. So here's my lesson: never let betrayal convince you that you're powerless. Even when your own blood turns against you, even when they laugh at the table without you, remember, you still have a seat. You just might have to fight for it. And when you win, sit tall, sit proud, and let them choke on the silence you leave behind. Because justice isn't just served in courtrooms. Sometimes it's served in the simple joy of knowing you stood up, reclaimed your life, and reminded the world, you are not to be underestimated. When I look back on everything that happened, I realize something that took me far too long to learn. Family is not just about blood, it's about respect, loyalty, and love. Too many of us get trapped in the idea that we owe unconditional loyalty to people who share our last name, even when they've shown us nothing but betrayal and contempt. The truth? No one has the right to drain your energy, steal your peace, or exploit your kindness, not even family. Walking away wasn't easy. I cried, I questioned myself, I even felt guilty for daring to put up boundaries. But I learned that guilt is the language of manipulation. Once I stopped listening to it, I started hearing my own voice for the first time. I began to see that protecting my future, my home, my finances, and my mental health wasn't selfish, it was survival. Here's the hardest pill to swallow: the people we love the most can sometimes be the very ones holding us back. In my case, it was my own flesh and blood, treating me like an ATM and a doormat. But the moment I took a stand, the moment I said enough, I unlocked a version of myself that was stronger than I ever believed possible. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about empowerment. It's about taking control of your narrative when others try to write it for you. It's about remembering that you are allowed to say no, even if it disappoints people. Especially if it disappoints people who never respected you to begin with. In American culture, we celebrate independence. We celebrate the courage to chase our own dreams, to build our own homes, to protect our hard-earned retirement, and to guard our hearts from toxic cycles. If my story reminds you of anything, let it be this: you deserve a seat at a table where you're respected, not tolerated. And maybe that's the ultimate justice: choosing yourself, even when others refuse to. Because at the end of the day, revenge isn't always about hurting them back. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is living well, standing tall, and never letting anyone write you off again. They thought I was their victim. Turns out, I was their lesson. If this story hit home for you, don't forget to subscribe. More stories of justice, survival, and sweet revenge are waiting for you here.